Whether you want powerful Pokemon, helpful PvP items, cool vanities to flex on your friends, or rare shinies, pretty much every type of player in Pokemon needs some amount of Pokeyen. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the top 5 consistent methods for making Pokeyen in PokeMMO. This list should pretty much always remain relevant as these methods almost never change, at least in terms of overarching methods. The specifics may change, so for example, what the best Pokemon to catch right now may change here and there, but that method will always be relevant. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it with my first actual honorable mention, number 6 technically on the list, which is going to be Elite Four reruns. The reason why this is number 6 on my list, because I've heard very good things about this, but I actually don't have much experience with it or know the exact numbers to really recommend it to you guys properly. E4 reruns, from my understanding, requires a very, very high barrier to entry. There's a lot of good Pokemon you need, as well as potions, revives, etc. It's a pretty difficult money-making method to get into. Hopefully one day I'll have a guide on it, as it is considered a really solid money-making method, but for now, I'll have to just have it as an honorable mention on this list. Now, onto our first real entry onto this list, number 5, catching Pokemon. And I know that may seem really simple, but catching Pokemon in Pokemon is almost always consistently a good money-making method for many, many reasons. It really comes down to how the economy works in Pokemon, especially alongside breeding. Any Pokemon with a 1x31, except for rare specific examples like Shedinja maybe, but any Pokemon that can breed with a 1x31 is always going to have some decent value. Certain Pokemon are going to have more values than other. You might want to go for a specific egg group or a specific species of Pokemon. For example, Pokemon with really good desirability in the market with also those stats. So for example, a 1x31 attack or speed Meowth is specifically worth a lot of money because people need payday Meowths. Another good example might be something like a Gible, a 1x31 attack or speed Gible, since Garchomp is literally the most used Pokemon in Pokemon PvP, is also tends to be worth a lot of money. But you could also farm something like Magikarp, which is commonly found and easy to grind, that's in the Dragon Egg group, so you can breed onto Pokemon like Gible, Garchomp, or Gyarados, for example. Catching Pokemon for profit at its core is pretty simple, but there's a lot of micro-efficiency things, or whether to know what Pokemon to catch at the time does get kind of complicated. Thankfully, I do have a Pokemon money-making playlist on my channel with over 70 videos that covers a bunch of the methods I'm going to be talking about in today's video, as well as tons of loot from 1 hours of catching these different Pokemon. Getting yourself a catching Pokemon, aka a Breloom, Smeargle, Parasect with False Swipe and Spore, and then just catching as many Pokemon as possible with Pokeballs is always going to be consistent and solid. Now, it may not always be the best, so definitely keep in mind of the market at the time and what's going on. I do have a video guide as well on how to price your Pokemon. That's an extremely important thing when it comes to making money via this method. Correctly pricing Pokemon is absolutely crucial, and there will be an ultimate price checking guide down below. Catching Pokemon for profit can literally make you anywhere from 20k an hour all the way up to like 300,000 or 400,000 Pokeyen per hour. It just totally depends on the state of the economy and totally depends what Pokemon are hot right now, your game knowledge, and maybe what videos are out. I do want to also quickly note that if you price your Pokemon correctly, they should sell. I get a lot of comments on my videos when I do loot for 1 hour, when I do anything regarding to selling Pokemon, people saying, oh, I bet this didn't sell, or oh, I bet this was overpriced, yada, yada, yada. People will always hate in the comments. That's YouTube. But an important thing to keep in mind is if you're pricing your stuff correctly, it should sell by the time the auction ends. It's almost never worth to end your auction early just to relist it. You almost always want to let it sit and wait for it to sell. Now, I will say 90% of the stuff that I list sells. However, 9% that I list is either overpriced or underpriced, incorrectly priced. That's just human error, and it absolutely does happen. So usually, if something of mine doesn't sell, it is from my own personal mistake. Then I would say 1% of stuff that doesn't sell ends up being really, really niche, and you may need to like breed it or change the IVs or just wait for it to sell longer. So I would say most stuff sells pretty well within that 2-week period if you price it correctly. The Pokemon economy is pretty freaking active, but people will always try to cope and say, nope, game's just dead. That's why my stuff won't sell. Definitely not my incorrect pricing. All right, on to number 4, a money-making method that I'm not super good at, as you can see by my dead plants. But berry farming is pretty freaking fantastic. You get a huge return when berry farming for the little amount of time you have to put into it. Now, berry farming, there is a fair bit to learn about it. There's also a pretty high risk, in my opinion, where if you don't get back to your berries in time to water them or take care of them, they'll die, and you'll lose a lot of the upfront capital put into actually growing and putting those berries into the ground. Seeds can be shockingly expensive when it comes to berry stuff, which is what you need to actually plant them. Don't worry, there will be berry farming guides linked in the description down below, because once again, it's not something that I'm super familiar with and I can't like recommend. I think I'm familiar with it enough to be able to recommend it pretty consistently. Berry farming is a money-making method as old as time in Pokemon, at least as long as it's been in the game, and it is really consistent, really fantastic, especially huge returns for how much time you put in. Now, number 3 is going to be where things get pretty complicated. Number 3 is going to be breeding for profit. I will have a breeding guide linked down below, as well as other videos showing off breeding for profit. Breeding for profit has extremely high returns, but there's also a huge barrier to entry. Breeding for profit takes so much game knowledge, so much upfront capital, so much understanding of the market and what people need. It's pretty similar to our number 2 slot, but breeding for profit can make you anywhere from like 400 to 600,000, maybe even more per hour. I would say if you're good at breeding for profit, you're probably making minimum 300 to 400k per hour. But I will say breeding for profit's also surprisingly very mentally taxing. Finding the perfect breeds, the perfect Pokemon that match up with each other for the best price available, getting correct natures, getting those 20 to 25 plus rolls. There's a lot of RNG that can also be a factor that can really bump up your price ranges. If you randomly roll correct nature on something, it's going to bump up your profit margin by like 30 or 40k per breed. What you'll often see is people breeding things like 2x31 Gibbles and then just hoping for that Adamant or Jolly nature roll. Let's actually go ahead and check the price difference on that. So right now, the cheapest 2x31 Gibble with 31 attack and speed is around 50k. The next one's actually ends up being 62k. Is both with terrible natures, obviously. You're probably only profiting, I would guess, like 5 to 15k on these breeds. But if it were to come out Adamant, you end up making, look at this, an astronomical amount of more Pokeyen, 130k. You're literally making 60, 70 more thousand Pokeyen just by a random nature roll. What about Jolly? You're looking at around 100k as well. That natures can be such a huge boon to your profit per hour when breeding. And then carrying on from breeding, number 2 is going to be flipping for profit. You can flip items, you can flip Pokemon. I think Pokemon are the best. Items are pretty consistent, but a lot of people, you won't find them underlisting items very hard because it's pretty easy to find the price of an item, whereas finding the price of a Pokemon can be wildly more complicated. You can often find really underpriced Dittos, for example, things with 1x31 in a stat, and then 20 to 25 plus in many other stats, and flip those for a huge profit over time. Shiny flipping is something I also highly recommend. If you're a veteran player, I want to preface, flipping is also one of those things that requires a lot of upfront capital. The more capital you have equals the more flips and more profit per hour. It requires a ton of game knowledge, market knowledge, knowing what Pokemon are desired and hot on the market at the moment. It's not easy or recommended to new players unless you come from other MMOs and have some flipping experience. And then even then, the Pokemon economy, is wildly different from other economies since you have so many things to consider when actually price checking or valuing a Pokemon. It's species, it's gender, it's IVs, it's nature, its level, its ability, its egg group. It's just so easy to make a mistake while flipping or just pricing a Pokemon in general, but the rewards are super high for this reason. A lot of new players misprice things or sell things too cheap to get quick cash, while a patient flipper can easily make 600,000 plus Pokeyen per hour. I've also heard stories of people, while egg hunting for a rare shiny, spending tons of Pokeyen. What they do is, while they have to wait for their 6 hours of eggs to hatch, they just flip in the meantime, and they can actually profit while egg hunting. Now that requires, once again, flipping is comparable to breeding where it requires a lot of mental energy. It's kind of exhausting to flip for that amount of time, but you'll make huge returns in the process. Flipping is almost always going to be one of the best money-making methods in pretty much any MMO or pretty much any game with any amount of economy. You can do it on alt accounts. It really does just require a lot of patience, understanding, knowledge, and value towards the game. It takes time to get good at flipping, as well as it does take time to actually sell things that you're flipping. If you're trying to make quick cash, flipping or breeding aren't really going to be for you, but they can be super solid if you're a patient long-term player. Now, number one on my list isn't actually the method that makes the most amount of Pokeyen, it's the method that is most accessible to the most amount of players and also makes the most consistent pure Pokeyen. Talking about gym reruns, of course. I've made many videos, and I have 2 guides covering this in great detail, as well as I'll be linking a 3rd guide probably down below, Firebox's guide, or there's other people's guides who make more Pokeyen than I do on my gym run. I really like my gym run because it's pretty comfy and consistent. I think once you start doing more than one gym rerun a day, or if you start doing a really complex gym rerun, it can be a way to burn you out, so do be careful with that. But gym reruns are pure Pokeyen, they're consistent, they're pretty easy once you learn the strategy. The strategy is not super easy to pick up. There is a low to medium, I'd say probably medium barrier to entry. You only need around 400,000 to 600,000 Pokeyen to actually build a gym rerun team, which can sound like a lot to new players, but you'll literally make that money back after 2 hours or 2 days of gym reruns. You can only do gym reruns every 18 hours or essentially once a day, and you'll end up making 300,000 to 400,000 Pokeyen profit in 1 hour really consistently and really brain dead once you actually get used to the muscle memory of the strategy. And if you're willing to breed or wait for deals, I have a video actually showing how to make a gym rerun team I made one for around 100k Pokeyen, not including the price of choice specs, which does up it quite a bit, but you can build a gym rerun team pretty cheap if you're willing to put in the extra time and energy to EV train and XP train it all yourself. But it honestly might be worth it if you have the Pokeyen to just buy the team outright and get into gym reruns as soon as possible. You do also need all regions done in Pokemon for this method to truly become number one. It's not bad with only 1 to 2 regions since you're still getting pure yen early game, which is honestly super nice, but you do unlock the full power of gym reruns with all the regions done. 2 guides or 3 guides will actually be linked below, once again covering different strategies. There's a beginner strategy with just double Typhlosion. There's a more moderate strategy which covers double Typhlosion plus double Blastoise, or you could even substitute a Crocodile in there. You really don't need double Blastoises, and I talk about that in my updated guide. It's double Blastoises, to give you an idea. Doing the double Typhlosion strat, you do around 18 gyms in an hour, plus some extra rich trainers. With the double Blastoise, you do 20. So you're literally only adding 2 more gyms within the hour, which obviously adds up over time. It's like an extra 30k Pokeyen at that point every single day. But the Blastoises are pretty expensive and difficult to make. You need egg moves, etc. So don't stress over the Blastoises is a huge point that I make in that video. I think a lot of people miss. There's many different ways to do a gym rerun. I think sticking to one of the guides on YouTube is really the way to do it, whether it's mine or Firebox's or whoever's. Gym reruns are just, there's a sort of a solved strategy to them, and in my opinion, it's not worth reinventing the wheel over. I think a lot of people jump into gym reruns and want to make their own team. They want to try something creative. They do something like Flareon strats or trying a level 100 Torkoal, and I just really don't recommend this. There's a reason why things are the way they are. One of the most common questions I get is the level 100 Torkoal thing. People ask, hey, why not just run a high level Torkoal? And I have to explain, oh, running a high level Torkoal actually opens them up to fake out issues, where if they fake out you, now your Torkoal lives, and then you're put into a shitty situation positioning wise in the battle, and then now one of your Typhlosion is going to take damage, and you're probably going to lose that gym. Like, it just creates more issues than it's worth. A lot of people try to reinvent the wheel when it comes to gym reruns, and I recommend really just following a strategy. I know it sucks, but getting that 1 hour of money making method out of the way. A lot of people, this is what I do a lot of the times, just do your gym rerun when you wake up in the morning or whenever you want to start playing Pokemon, and then after your gym rerun, your money making for the day is pretty much done. If you do one gym rerun every day, you're going to be making so much Pokeyen and Pokemon within just that 1 hour. You can pretty much then go do whatever you want, breeding for profit or breeding in general, making PvP teams, shiny hunting, battle tower, whatever you want to do, storyline runs. If you do your gym rerun once a day, you'll pretty much be set on Pokeyen, and that's why I think it's such a good method. It's so consistent, it's so brain dead. I do it every day when I stream usually to show that consistency and also encourage people to sort of get their daily gym rerun out of the way. But that's it. That's my top 5, in my opinion, the top 5 best money-making methods in Pokemon. Hopefully this video was helpful in some way. If it was, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe for daily Pokemon videos, follow the Twitch for streams, links down below. Monday through Thursday at 12 p.m. I stream 4 days a week, and I drop videos 7 days a week, so 11 pieces of content a week, usually. Discord's down below if you care about that, and if you want to go above and beyond and support me, YouTube memberships, Twitch Primes, Twitch subs, PayPal, and Venmo help out a ton if you are enjoying the content, and it's been helpful to you enough to warrant it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Go play Pokemon. Have fun. Make Pokeyen. Peace. Hey, thank you so much for watching until the very end of the video. Hopefully it was a positive asset on your day in some way. And thank you to everyone's name who's on this list, who is a massive positive asset to my day every single day. I appreciate you all. Thank you for going above and beyond and allowing me to do what I do.